Tonight, there will be a new Black Widow in the MCU. Will there be a Tron 3? And we got Bat news on comic book canon. Welcome to Comic Book Canon. It is Friday. We are here most Fridays. We weren't here last Friday because it was the 4th of July weekend, but we are here now. That's what's important, to talk about all the fun, geeky good news, geeky goodness in the comic book world. Let me introduce you to my co-host, Chris, who can probably speak a lot better than I can right now. Chris, how are you today?
I'm hot. It's summer, and I'm just glad to be here right now.
I'm glad as well, because we got a lot of things to talk about. But before we do, we want to remind you all to give us a follow on the old Instagram at Comic Book Canon. Also, please like and subscribe to this channel. We need 100 subscriptions before we can get the Comic Book Canon name. Right now, it's a clunky YouTube name, and we don't like that. So please help us out. If you haven't already, subscribe. All right. With that being said, we got some news, Chris, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. Some of my favorite characters in all of superhero, fandom are making big headlines. So
yeah, I'm sure it's not only you, it's many of them as well. Many of us fans as well, because right now we're going to start with Batwoman. That's right. Finally, the CW has cast their new Batwoman. It's been since May since the original Batwoman left the show, leaving everybody high and dry. But finally, we have a new Batwoman. It was announced earlier this week that Javicia Leslie will be the new Batwoman. If you had money on her, you are making a boatload, because I don't think anybody else did. Javicia recently played was recently in God Friend of Me, The Family Business, MacGyver, and Always a Bridesmaid. She will be playing a new character named Ryan Wilder. We went over this when the showrunner said that they are going to go in a different direction. She was extremely excited about this news, recently posting on Instagram, "For all of the little black girls dreaming to be a superhero one day, it is possible." Super exciting for the CW, getting some fresh new faces in there, getting some diversity. I'm all for it. Chris, how are you feeling?
I think this is great. Already, we're hearing so much backlash, and it's just like two things. For one, it's comic book stuff. It's TV shows. For two, they can't ever win with some people, but personally, for me, I'm happy. The one thing, and we talked about this when we first reported Ruby Rose exiting, and they introduced this idea of a whole new character. I just thought the description of this character was so odd. Like, what was it? Like, she lived in her van with her cat and would like sold dope or something. Like, it was so weird. Or with the plant, she lived in her van with her friend Plant or something like that. That just, and it's still really strange to me. But putting that aside, I mean, this actress, I'm not too familiar with her. She looks fierce. Let's see what she can do. But this is a situation where it's like you can't make everyone happy, because, how are you going to explain the exit of Kate Kane? I mean, Kate Kane is the character. Not only is she the character, but I mean, the ties to Bruce Wayne and that whole, it's just it's scary, the risk that CW is taking. But look, when it comes to this casting of some brand new character, hey man, I'm all for it, and I have no judgment until I see a performance on that screen.
Exactly. I mean, the first season seemed to I didn't see the whole season, but from what I saw, I really kind of liked where it was going. It's a shame Ruby Rose did leave, but if you're going to replace somebody, just bring in somebody out of left field and shake it up a little bit. They will have to explain what happened to Kate Kane, and the showrunner said that they will be doing that this season. But as long as they cover that, I'm cool with this. I like this. I like the direction they're going in. And again, we need more diverse characters on TV, in comic books, everywhere, on film. So I am all about this.
Yeah. And look, it's like recasting a character is such thin ice already. And, there could have been so much backlash with the recasting and it not panning out, and it could kill the show. So even though it's a risk to create this brand new character that was never even in the comics, we got to allow the show a shot and just see where it goes.
Yeah, Bishner wants to know, she's supposed to be replacing Ruby. I mean, she is replacing Ruby Rose as the new Batwoman, but she's a completely different character named Ryan Wilder, not Kate Kane. So let's just clarify that. So we'll see. Again, the jury's going to be out. I think since they had a solid first season, and that's usually the season you get your footing underneath you, or the second season. Let's see if they can build off of this and move forward in a positive direction. Speaking of Bat news, we have more Bat news here. It's kind of crazy. Am I right?
Yeah, this is a lot. It's a lot, and a lot of positive things for Batman fans, hopefully, but some question marks as well, right?
Absolutely. It was announced today that Matt Reeves will be working on a DC-based drama for HBO Max, the new streaming service from HBO. This series will focus on the Gotham Police Department in the world that he is creating in the Batman film he's directing right now. Not only that, this is where it gets exciting for me, Chris, because Matt Reeves will be working with Terence Winter, who also created Boardwalk Empire, which is one of my favorite shows from HBO. That is super exciting. That's gonna right there. I can already sense what the tone is gonna be. The HBO Max press release said, set in the world Reeves is creating for the Batman feature film and will build upon the motion picture's examination of the anatomy of corruption in Gotham City, ultimately launching a new Batman universe across multiple platforms. The series provides an unprecedented opportunity to extend the world established in the movie and further explore the myriad of compelling and complex characters in Gotham. Right there, there's a lot to unpack right there. I think you know how I feel. I'm worried about the DCEU, what they're going to be doing with that, and splintering off into other universes. That kind of worries me because it's just me being compulsive, but I like my universes kind of within each other. Granted, you could play with the multiverse and all that and bring all these characters in, but what are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, we've been sitting here for 7 years now since the release of the first DCEU film, and we want that connectivity. We want a universe, but let's try to play a little devil's advocate here and try to find some positive things. Batman is a character that is just has so much depth to him, and his villains and the relationships that he has in the Bat family, to where you can really have a Batman universe and make it work. The one thing that I like too, and although we haven't seen any of it yet, we haven't seen Matt Reeves' film, but I'm getting a feeling that I personally am really gonna like the tone that they're setting up. Boardwalk Empire, loved it too. Imagine that live action setting of Gotham, kind of with that sort of Batman nostalgia that almost like we saw in the animated series. I could definitely see these creators bringing that tone to it. So there's a lot of positive things here, but yeah, I think ultimately the question marks that you're stating are like, but what about the DCEU?
Yeah.
And I think the reason why this is probably going the way it is, and this is all just guesses, is that when Matt Reeves came on, Ben Affleck was still supposed to play Batman, and that fell apart. So I'm going to assume that the Batman film was supposed to be in the DCEU, but since casting got all messed up, the DCU has so many issues already in their short past. Matt Reeves still had to go in a direction to say, how can we make this thing successful? And now build off it in a way that is kind of almost forcing it to be its own thing, because the DCEU has almost abandoned it, or Warner Brothers has abandoned that to be its own thing, while they're still trying to mend the wounds of the DCEU. So it's kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. And unfortunately, I just think Warner Brothers' mistakes of the past is why this is the way it is. But I do have hope that whatever we do see will be positive. But in the end, yeah, we want some kind of connectivity without this character being oversaturated, because we know there's still got to be a Batman in the DCEU. To some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to add this, a quote from Matt Reeves. This is an amazing opportunity not only to expand the vision of the world I'm creating in the film, but to explore it in the kind of depth and detail that only a long-form format can afford. And getting to work with the incredibly talented Terence Winter, Boardwalk Empire, who has written so insightfully and powerfully about worlds of crime and corruption. It's an absolute dream. So, again, we can all sense what the tone will be. And we all saw earlier, a year, 2 years ago with Fox's Gotham. It's not going to be like this. I think we can all agree it's not going to be anything like this, especially if you bring a guy like Terence Winter in to help produce this type of a show. So I think it's exciting. Let me clear this. I think it's very exciting, but I am nervous because, again, DC hasn't given us enough to trust them in the plans that they have moving forward. Again, we say it every show. We want to see every comic book film succeed because it's only going to grow this thing much bigger. That includes DC. I mean, Marvel has just killed it. But DC, especially the DCEU, really needs to prove to us that they know what they're doing. And I hope that this doesn't get in the way of that.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. 100%. Let's hope for this to be successful. That's why I used the term oversaturate. Yeah. We don't want this to oversaturate these characters or even overshadow now, to a certain extent. We still want to see successful Batman in the DCEU. But hey, I mean, what about, because there was some rumors about maybe Ben Affleck still wants to come back to some extent. I don't know what they're doing. Huh?
That's what happened when you open up a can of worms saying Michael Keaton's coming back, which again, we're excited about, but you got to have that middle-aged or less Batman in the DCEU. In my opinion, I think you feel the same way. But anyways, speaking of oversaturation, Marvel hasn't oversaturated any of their characters. They've done a great job, especially with this news coming up here that we got. Yeah.
We'll talk about like knowing when to switch it up, leave characters dead most likely, and bring new ones in. So this is probably I'm going to assume this is good news. It might be kind of heartbreaking for many, but the director of the Black Widow film, Kate Shortland, has announced that Florence Pugh's character, Yelena Belova, will be taking up the mantle of the Black Widow, moving along for the future of the MCU. Now, again, like I said, this is kind of heartbreaking that Natasha is dead, and it looks like she's going to stay dead. She did state, the director, Shortland, did state as well that this film will showcase kind of a send-off to Romanoff's character. So maybe not a funeral, but it will kind of close that chapter. And we as fans will be able to see that since, we were kind of crying out for that in Endgame, like, what's up? So she's just dead and nobody's mourning. We're just mourning Tony Stark. But so I think this is a good news because although I think many fans probably could have still seen some more of Scarlett Johansson's, Black Widow character, I think Marvel understands how to keep things fresh and how to move forward, and hey, let's have another actor come into the role and see what they can do with it.
Yeah, I think this is great. It kind of follows along what we see in the comic books. You have, an existing character where the alter ego departs that character, whether it be by death or they just walk off or what have you, and then you have a new character stepping into that role, right? So Florence Pugh being the new Black Widow in the MCU, I'm all for this. I like seeing, because then that Black Widow legacy will continue. I really am looking forward to something like this. I'm really excited to see her interact with all of the existing heroes in the universe. So it definitely excites me. And again, there's no way that Scarlett Johansson will be coming back as the Black Widow. Unless it's a dream sequence or a flashback or something like that. Her character, gone. Natasha, gone. So we need to move on from that, and why not bring, again, a fresh new face into the role and continue the legacy of the Black Widow?
Absolutely. And, we gotta understand this isn't the comic books. We can kill characters off and bring them back in the comic books, and it works. But I'm happy with these characters being dead and remaining dead. Tony Stark, leave him dead. And I think it goes to show that, Robert Downey Jr. probably could have played that role for 10 more years and we would have been happy with it. But, the way they ended it, it leaves that impact, and it's everlasting. Now, the only one that I'm petitioning here is Captain America, because we got to bring back Cap. Chris Evans is not done. He's not done.
He's technically not dead. We could have an old man Cap, can't we?
Yep.
I'd like to see him sling that shield at what 95 or what, however old he is.
Yeah, however.
But that is exciting. That is exciting MCU news. And we saw a bit of exciting MCU imagery last year during Comic-Con. Daniel Bruhl and the Zemo mask. He finally came out and kind of said, remarked on what he thinks about it. But before we get to that, I mean, how cool is Baron Zemo? How cool is this character? How cool is his look? I mean, I am super excited. When I saw that footage from that they showed announcing Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was extremely excited to know that Daniel Bruhl will be wearing close to a comic-accurate mask, as we saw here, again, almost a year ago. Daniel said, I remember that Carrie Skoglund, the director of Falcon and Winter Soldier, came to Budapest, and we recorded something with me being Zemo, and I was very happy and enthusiastic to see the mask. I was incredibly thrilled to go back because I remember that I had a lot of fun being in something completely different and getting to explore the MCU and become a part of that. I have the fondest memories of collaborating with all these wonderful actors, and to see Sebastian Stan again and Anthony Mackie this time around, and to come back to something which on the one hand felt common and known, and on the other hand felt something completely new and something fresh. I mean, right there says it all. I'm extremely excited for the series. I'm extremely excited to see Baron Zemo kind of step it up as even more of a kind of supervillain. He had his pretty diabolical plan he had in Civil War. And again, really want to see his story continue.
Well, I'm wearing my purple. You guys it probably looks faded purple, but I'm wearing my purple Kobe Hyro shirt today. Rest in peace, Kobe. But I wore the purple in honor of this news because, yeah, I mean, Baron Zemo, he's iconic. I think he's a villain that was a bit ahead of his time too, and how they wrote him in the comic book. So I'm excited. Absolutely, it looks great. It's basic, it's simple, but it looks so great, and it gives that realistic feel, And I'm just hoping that we still get this August release, because when I signed up for Disney Plus, when was it, last August, right? It's like I have to wait a year to get our first taste of MCU Disney Plus stuff, and I'm really hoping that it comes on time. There has been talk that it might be a little delayed, so but when it gets here, man, I can't wait.
I have some bad news for you. It's definitely not going to be August.
Yep.
It would probably be November. I'm sorry to tell you, but look, you've waited this long. I think we can wait a little bit longer. But speaking of waiting this long, we waited quite a while for a sequel to the movie we're going to be talking about next. Chris.
Yes.
Tell us.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most exciting film experiences growing up. I didn't see it in the movie theater, probably too young, but just watching it at home was Tron. What an amazing movie that came out of the 80s. And it just was in a league of its own at the time, in my opinion. And then, 10 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, we finally got a sequel. And the fact that this film franchise didn't get a sequel until that long, I thought it worked, and I was extremely surprised with Tron Legacy. So to know that there are talks right now about a Tron 3 happening has me extremely excited. Now, a lot of rumors. There is one secure fact that we do know, and that is that there is a script for a Tron 3. That is a fact. Some of the rumors is that in 2015 there was concerns with a third installment not being fitting for cinematic release for whatever reasons. I don't know if they felt like the budget would be too large, but now that we have a platform like Disney Plus, there's been a lot of talk that this could be a Disney Plus original released straight to Disney Plus, not as a series, as a featured film, where they could keep the budget low but still make this film what it should be. There is also rumors that the Tron Legacy director Joseph Kosinski will be returning, and also Draft Punk, who did the score for Tron Legacy, to really bring that same vibe back in for another film. But most exciting rumor for me, this was talked about 3 years ago in 2017, is that Jared Leto might be playing a possible villain character in the next installment if it does happen. So I'm excited. I want this movie to happen. I don't care if it takes 2 or 3 more years. Let's do it.
Yeah, I love Tron. It's one of my favorite films growing up. I shared that experience with my dad. He loves that film. And yeah, I can't believe it's been 10 years since the sequel, which I love that film. Not as much, but I truly thought it was an excellent, excellent sequel. And to hear that they may be coming, we already knew that they had talks about this. We already knew that it was in the early stages of development. But the fact that we're starting to hear more solid information. Granted, this information is coming from a podcast from a Disney music executive, but he would have an inside track as to if this would happen. It excites me. I'm all for it, even if it's a series on Disney Plus or if it's a film on Disney Plus. I want to see a Tron 3. I want to see Jeff Bridges come back. I want to see all of these, the storylines. I want to see it continue and evolve. It's super exciting. It absolutely would excite me.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Bishner5929 also said, wow, Legacy has been 10 years already. I can't believe that myself. But I was planning on watching it before the show just so I could talk a little bit more about it because I haven't seen it in a long time. Have not had a chance, but I will actually get back to that. So that is the news for this week, Chris. That was a lot of news, a lot of solid news, really kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah, this is good stuff. A lot of things to look forward to,
especially given the fact that we're 2 weeks out from Comic-Con and we're starting to hear this news. The news is only going to get bigger, by the way, guys. Let's all keep on the edge of the seat. Be back here on Friday for more news, but the show's not done. It's not even close to being done because we're going to get into our Cover Price top 10 hottest comic books of the week. We use this site, coverprice.com, kind of like a NASDAQ. In a stock market index that shows you the data of the hottest comics that were sold in the previous week. This comes out every Tuesday. Our show's on Friday. We like to kind of talk about what these top 10 comics are, and Chris likes to take a few himself and just kind of explore a little further. So why don't we just get into it right now with the top 10 hottest comics? That being number 10 is Batman number 93. The Jorge Jimenez variant. At number 9 is Thor number 5, the first Black Winter. Essid Ribic 1 in 25 variant. At number 8 is Alpha Flight number 1, first Puck, Tundra, Wildheart. A lot of good stuff going on there. Number 7, Negan Lives number 1, the gold variant. That's a hard one to get. Pretty expensive. It's going for a pretty expensive price right now. Number 6, Uncanny X-Men 193. Firestar in Marvel continuity. This is still hanging in there with the rumor that she may make an appearance in Disney Plus or somewhere in the MCU. Number 5 is Aliens number 1, the first Aliens in comics, Dark Horse 1988. Number 4 is Paper Girls number 1. Number 3 is Ruins of Ravencroft, Carnage number 1. It's the ancestor of Cassidy, the Carnage now. Number 2 is Civil War 2. Number 4, First Immortal She-Hulk, or so they say. And number 1, Ultimate Fallout. Number 4, the first Miles Morales. That is not going anywhere. That book is hot. Am I right, Chris?
That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say to that.
You cheered on that top 10 right now?
I am a Miles cheerleader, man. I'll go get some pom-poms. Some black and red pom-poms and just I love it.
I mean, how can you not like that character? I mean, we're going to get into in a second, but how can you not like the character Miles Morales? He's incredible, especially with his, we talk about it every week. We don't need to get into it now. We all love Miles. But right now, you're going to talk about 3 books from this list that kind of pique your interest. Let's get into that.
Great. Diverse 10 books here this week. Again, I said it before, I'll say it again. It proves that, comic books are selling. The market is healthy. I picked 3 out. Let's talk about the first one on my list, and that's Alpha Flight, number 1. Again, Alpha Flight. Man, this book right here is, technically, depending who you talk to, towards the end of the Bronze Age, some call it Copper Age. This is a book right now that I think has been overlooked. This is a storyline that I think has been overlooked. And this is a team that has, there's speculation going on, and at what point are we going to see them in the MCU and whatnot. But look, ultimately, I love the fact that people are going after this book right now because it's from an era that I love so much. It's got a great story. It's got great characters to it. Canada represent, wearing my Montreal Expos hat today, right? But I think the bigger thing is this. This book has been hot and it keeps creeping up and the price isn't really going anywhere yet. And I want to really reflect on the fact that people get so sensitive when books get hot, you know, because they complain about, oh, well, something in the market's being manipulated. It's all because of this. It's all because of that. But really, maybe it's all because you don't own the book. So I'm going to tell folks right now, if you are one of those that really wants to go after a book, but you don't, or you only want to go after it gets hot and that price increases, look, this is a book that I'm not guaranteeing you is going to do anything in terms of value, but look, it's a fun book. You can still get it for under $10 in a decent condition. Go buy it because I'll tell you what, if it does increase in value, then you're going to be happy and not be all sensitive about, darn it, screw this market, it's all rigged, right? So, hey, it's a great book to have. Alpha Flight, man, one of the most underrated groups from Marvel, I think.
I forgot to mention to you in rehearsal here, I actually just purchased this past week 3 issues for a total of $42.
There you go. There you go.
That's including shipping, everything, like $42.
Nice. Yep.
So I'm on board. I love John Byrne too, by the way. I never have ever owned this issue, but as you said, it's been in the top 10 for the past. This is 3 weeks now,
right?
So it's super affordable. You have no reason. We're not pushing the market up. We're not trying to make money off of this investment. Like it's there. It's there for the taking. There's a ton of them out there.
Absolutely. You know, and this is just, look, you know, I think one thing that collectors tend to miss a lot is that, look, time keeps moving forward. Like people are just saying, what, Tron Legacy was 10 years ago. I mean, guys, it's 2020. And when you look at the eras of comic books, you know, the older they get, the rarer they get, the more demand is going to be there regardless. And this is just a great run. Let's not just talk about number 1. I have almost a complete run of number 1 through 100 of Alpha Flight. You want to know where I found most of those books in decent high grades? The 50-cent and dollar bins. You know, so this is a run that if you actually enjoy reading, you know, go find some copies for cheap still while you can. It's a great run, and I'm so happy that this book is up here. So
definitely,
that's my take on that.
Hopefully, we'll see some of those characters in the MCU. But moving on,
absolutely. All right. My second pick today is Aliens #1. The first time we see the Aliens franchise in comic books, man. This was talk about time. I was thinking this book came out 22 years ago in 1988, but darn it, it's been 32 years. I'm that old. Beautiful book. I love the old school Dark Horse logo. And I love the colors in this book and the alien coming down. It is just, man, that on that black frame. If you have this book in a high grade, man, keep it. Keep it in some Mylar. So, you know, this book is getting hot for multiple reasons. One that I would just want to point out here real quick. There has been rumor, and it's been in multiple publications, and I don't know the validity of this, but there is rumor that Sigourney Weaver, who is now 70 years old, but hey, still rolling, man. I mean, she doesn't look it. She might be reprising the role of the iconic Ridley in a new Aliens film. Man, if this happens, I'm telling you that I'm all for it. What I would love to see is James Cameron and Ridley Scott come together and team up, because we know Ridley's been back under the helm of the film franchise, but we know that what James Cameron did with the Aliens movie, you know, the sequel to the first one, amazing. So if that happens, I definitely think that this book is going to skyrocket in value. Other than different things happening with the property, Marvel taking over, you know, who knows if we do see any kind of new sequels to this franchise. Could we see a possible crossover with the MCU?
Whoa. First off, Sigourney Weaver is not 70 years old, is she?
Yeah, she is 70 years old.
Holy
Same age as my mom.
Holy cow. All right.
Crazy.
next, I don't think I just want to kind of reiterate or kind of reinforce what you're saying. Do you think Marvel purchasing the rights to, Predator and Aliens had anything to do with this as well?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think we have people that hang on to this stuff. If we know that, and it not doesn't, I don't think it necessarily has to do with Marvel. It's just the fact that it's something fresh for the franchise. Marvel's taking them over. It could have been Image or DC or taken, and I think that would have just boosted the hype and more attention towards this key book. So absolutely, and I think once we see how Marvel handles it, that's going to obviously influence some of these older books. But I'll tell you, man, I personally, well, for one, I'll be buying those Marvel comics at least at first, because that just it excites me. But two, man, I want to see Marvel. Kevin Feige, who now is mingling and has his hand in the cookie jar of the comic book Marvel too. I want him to say, look, we got these this franchise to this extent. Let's play around with it more. I mean, who can we see like Hulk battling an alien?
I mean, come on. Yeah. And by the way, one of the promo images they had in the press release was Predator holding Iron Man's helmet. So
yes,
it's going to be happening, but will it take the next level? Will it take the next step into the MCU?
Yeah.
Woo! That's some serious. Anyways, all right. So moving on. Your third book that you want to talk about.
All right, we got one more.
Indie. I get super excited talking about indie. So let's go.
Yeah. I just and again, this just guys, the comic book industry and market is just doing really, really good right now, and I love seeing indies on this list. And the number one of my picks is Paper Girls. Number one, it's about 5 years old, came out in 2015. The big hype around this book, Amazon Prime exclusive TV show. For those that aren't familiar with the storyline, it's about four young girls that kind of dive into a realm very similar to kind of like a Stranger Things. It's a very sci-fi horror. Takes place in the 80s, very retro. So I'm super excited to see this play out on film. And look, I want to dive into a quick little topic relating to this before we wrap up here. Again, when we talk about movie hype on these comic books, there's a lot of people that are, call them old head collectors or more, genuine collectors, and they're not really into the movies and all this stuff. They're just in it for the stories and the comic books. And they look at movie hype and TV show hype as being negative. But look, guys, it's all about what makes the world go around, right? Movie hype is such an amazing thing. And I've said this before, because it doesn't just bring in us middle-aged men that have been collecting since the 70s or 80s, and we are just so focused on superheroes. It allows these independent companies and these fresh storylines to have more platforms through different media. And we're seeing this, and it's getting more people involved. It's getting more people involved to then see these franchises say, oh, I really enjoyed the show. I'm going to go pick up the comic book now. And then it gets the younger generations involved as well. And I actually think the idea of what multimedia is doing when it comes to cinema and TV shows, and the fact that they are looking so heavily at, these characters and these storylines from Boom Studios, Image, Valiant, Dynamite, whatever it may be, it's really opening the doors for more success to share the love in this industry for these independent publishers. And I love it, man. I absolutely love it. It's keeping this industry thriving. And I can't wait for this show because I love Stranger Things. And I think this will be a similar fresh take. And I'm all about the 80s retro stuff as well. So
100%. And Isaac Maynard brought up a very good point. It's always great to see independent publishers make it on the top 10. That's how you have a healthy market right there. I mean, you can't say it better than that. I was just about to say, I love seeing these indies get get their fair share, get the attention, and have the opportunity to be brought to the mainstream, and it only strengthens the market. Isaac, very well said. So that, my friends, is the top 10 for this week. It's a nice top 10. I'm excited. I mean, I feel like since the 9 out of 10 Spider-Man week, it's been a really kind of crazy kind of top 10 each week. So I'm really excited to see what we have. It's one of my favorite segments. But anyways, moving on. Speaking of favorite segments, we came up with a segment, call to action to you guys. Tell us your favorite story. Tell us your favorite story of all time, you as a comic book reader. You guys did not disappoint. We got the most engagement for any call to action we've ever had. So once again, favorite story, CBC. You guys tell us what your favorite stories are, and we're going to share it with you, with you, the viewers, right now. Our first entry was from Michael Methvin, and he brought in the Sinestro Corps. He's a big fan of the Sinestro Corps. Sent us it in his stories. I have to say, Chris, I'm not too familiar with this storyline. I really like what Jeff Johns has done with the Green Lanterns and all the lanterns, all the spectrums. This is something I'm going to need to check out, but I have no doubt it's a pretty solid read.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've never been really big on Green Lantern, but a few years back, I actually hit up a huge sale at a store in Sacramento, and I filled up a long box. I got the books for like under a quarter each, and I filled up a long box of Jeff Johns, like Brightest Day, Blackest Night, Green Lantern stuff. So I haven't read it yet, but I've heard nothing but good stuff from so many people over the years.
Yeah, that's actually Brightest Day. I was Blackest Night, Brightest Day. That was an excellent storyline. I was totally into that, but I never got into Sinestro Corps. But Michael Methvin, thank you so much for sending it in. This next one, I took the time to read before the show. It's from Mr. Gretzky 9966. He sent in Fantastic Four Annual 3, The Wedding of Reed and Sue. I gotta say, man, like, this was insane. This was like Medlem. It was just mayhem. Every character, they stuffed every character into this thing with Jack Kirby goodness. It was outstanding. This is one of those things that kind of proves how special the Marvel Universe was. They're special now, but how special they were when they first started, because they just integrated this whole universe together early on, and it was just so cool seeing like literally almost every character, every villain, every superhero you could think of made an appearance in this issue. It was super cool. I really enjoyed it thoroughly, and I encourage all you guys to read that. Yeah,
we know Mr. Gretzky loves his old stuff, man. He's very retro. So I appreciate that. And imagine being a kid there, like you're 3 years basically into the Marvel age, and to have that comic book, you pay 25 cents off the rack, and you're going home and seeing such a universe unfold right in front of your eyes, man. I can't even imagine what it was like.
I mean, 25 cents, like, to us is nothing. I'm sure that was probably $3.99 to them back in the day. I don't know. But yeah, you got your money's worth with this one. It was like 24 pages of it's mayhem. If you guys have Marvel Unlimited, I'd suggest you check it out. That's where I took a look. All right, this next one is a classic that I read when I first started collecting books, like when I first started buying them. I don't know why I didn't think of this one, Chris, but Kraven's Last Hunt was sent to us by Cosmic Comic History. I mean, this thing, I went back and read a couple issues of this thing. First of all, the Mike Zeck art, outstanding. This book, though, I read when I was like 12. I don't know how I comprehended this. This thing was so dark, so deep, with so much kind of just substance and subconscious kind of, approach to it. Was just super dark, super intellectual. I don't know what my thought process was reading it back then, but it brought me, like, reading it now is completely fresh perspective as an adult. And it just reminded me how much I mean, the art was what drew me in back in the day. Mike Zeck was just outstanding, but the art still lives up, but the story's even better now that I you know, I'm a bit more mature. Well, it kind of blew me away.
Yeah, you know, J.M. DeMatteis on the story on that. I mean, he revolutionized the game. But you got to look at this era, you know, where you have these writers and artists like Frank Miller as well during the 80s that really revolutionized the comic book industry. And it wasn't just one thing or another. It wasn't just the art. It wasn't just the writing. It was really bringing on these teams that made it work. And when you talk about Mike Zeck, the way that he paneled that storyline, not only with his art, the gritty art itself, but just the paneling was so fresh for that time. And I you know, again, just go back. If you don't have the books, you have Marvel Unlimited, go buy the digital copy for $2. Look at it was visual, it was the storytelling, it was the visuals, it was all of it and how it was captured, man. It was just that. I think during the mid 80s when those things were happening, or like Batman Year One, and there's countless others too, you know, it really, because for me, I went back and read a lot, like especially the Spider-Mans. I went back and read them all over a couple year span as an adult. And because I was reading so much at once, I could see the change evolve, you know, when you got into that time period. I'm like, this is, it was groundbreaking. Absolutely. And
from like Watchmen on, it just became a more mature game. But like,
right.
just reading the same character with different voices and just the way it was plotted out it's just brilliant. And I got to finish that run reading it now at my age right now. And I again, thank you so much, Cosmic Comic History, for sending that one in. That one really it brought back a lot for me. All right, next up, M. Lazick with Age of Apocalypse. I gotta admit, M. Lazick, this is during the time I kind of stopped collecting for a little while. It was, I do believe, mid to late 90s. So I'm not as familiar with this title as most are. I do know a lot of people are looking back on it very fondly, and it's those issues are doing pretty well in the secondary market. I know you got a few 9.8s there of this series. So I got, this is one I definitely have to go back and read, Chris.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is the time period where just the industry was hurting. It was in a very dark place, and I think, you know, with Marvel, X-Men was one of those books that kind of still seemed to pump out some decent work. And I think what helped that probably was going into the new millennium. You know, we had X-Men hitting the big screen, so people just it was X-Men mania. It was almost like Batman in '89. You know, when in 2000. When we saw the X-Men on screen, you know, people just kept diving into X-Men. And we know that Age of Apocalypse, this run, and including some of the early Apocalypse storylines, you know, from X Factor and whatnot, were influenced the Apocalypse film that came out 6 years ago now. So yeah, these are books that are from this era that were kind of a shining light among the darkness. Yeah,
that late 90s was a pretty dark time, to the point where Marvel almost went bankrupt. But thankful to all of us, that didn't happen. So anyways, M. Lazick, thank you so much for sending that one in. Great choice. This next one, everybody should be familiar with. Everybody should be familiar with. There was no way you could avoid it. We had FXW Loves Comics send in The Death of Superman. I mean, this was everywhere. You could not miss this. The media frenzy for this particular storyline was bonkers. At this point in the early 90s, characters mostly stayed dead. So the fact that Superman was you know, the death of Superman, it kind of hit a lot of people like, oh my gosh, nobody's safe. This is obviously one of the top 3 comic book characters of all time. And for him to die in this storyline blew everybody away. That being said, a lot of people bought this issue thinking that they put their kids through college. I mean, there were over 1 million copies produced, so you could probably find these for pretty cheap. But again, really classic. It's now a classic storyline with Doomsday and all that. But this is a good one. FXW Loves Comics. Thank you for sending that in.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's funny? I got my copy, you know, in the black bag with the red blood drip logo. I bought it. I saved up my allowance. I remember the store owner of my local comic book shop saved a copy for me until I had the $10 to buy it. And it's still worth about $10 in the bag. So the irony of the value of this book, but I hear you, man. You know, such a infamous storyline that will never be forgotten, regardless of the value of the books. And I think when you talk about this character dying, at least for me and my friends, you know, we thought he was dead. We thought he was dead, and we weren't. I don't think we had any thought that he was coming back. But it's comic books. We know what usually happens. So
yeah, you know, I'm trying to put myself back in that. We talked about this earlier. I'm trying to put myself back in that time, and like I honestly didn't. I can't remember. I want to think that I thought he would be coming back because, like, I mean, come on, Superman can't be dead. Like, there's no way. So I'm pretty sure I believed that, but you know, again, it didn't happen all the time. It didn't happen as much as it does now, and then more people just come back. Where at this point, you can't even trust. Comic book deaths back then were always an impactful moment, and this one even more so because it was Superman. Absolutely. So, speaking of one of the most popular comic book characters of all time, we have another Spider-Man story sent in by Anthony AM412. This one is a classic. I didn't read it before this show. Or I didn't read it before Anthony submitted this, but I did read it before the show. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 33. It was outstanding. It was so good for many reasons for me, but it just kind of brings, you know, it just focuses on the core of who Spider-Man is, and the perfect little soul that he is, and the fight that he will give for anybody, you know. And it just, right here you see, you know, he fought Dr. Octopus. Sorry if I'm giving away spoilers. This issue's probably 50 years old though. Right. He fought Dr. Octopus in the
50-year-old spoiler.
He fought Dr. Octopus in the previous issue. The base crumbled on top of Spider-Man underwater. The water's about to come rushing in. He needs to get the serum to save Aunt May. He's got this rubble. He cannot get off him. But he thinks of how he failed Uncle Ben. He's not going to fail Aunt May. It's just an amazing. It's amazingly written and even more so drawn by Steve Ditko. Just the struggle he has to get out of here. And what's amazing about this is how Spider-Man Homecoming took from this. Y'all may remember when the Vulture blew up his little base there, and Spider-Man had to push his way out. Come on, Spidey. Come on, Spidey. Come on, Spidey. He had to motivate himself. Kind of similar thing happens in Amazing Spider-Man 33. I encourage all you guys, if you have Marvel Ultimate, whatever,
Unlimited.
I've had it for so long. I can't even say. If you have it, I encourage you all just to read this issue. It is truly outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. I love how they called that back in Homecoming. One really interesting thing with this, and I'm an advocate for Tom Holland's. I made videos on my channel saying that Tom Holland is the most comic book accurate Spider-Man and Peter Parker portrayal out of the three, and I've explained why with facts, not just opinions. But my son was talking to me the other day, and I about him. He's only 14 years old, and he's read all these classic Spider-Man issues too. And he says, you know, the one thing that I didn't like was that he didn't have that enthusiasm of fighting for Uncle Ben. And I am an advocate for the fact that we didn't need to see Uncle Ben again in terms of that whole, you know, him getting murdered and the whole origin story of Spider-Man. We saw it twice already over the last few years before we saw Tom Holland Spider-Man come into the MCU. But it's tough when you know that a really pivotal moment like this, and how that incident with Uncle Ben and him feeling responsible, and how that scarred him and really gave him that whole, with great power comes great responsibility. We know it's there in the MCU. They brought it up in Homecoming where, you know, Peter's telling Ned, like, oh, with everything Aunt May's just been through, I can't right now. It's just, but it's just not even really there, though, in terms of its meaning. And I hope that moving forward, that we get a little bit more of that. I know Tony Stark has been a big role model, but I want to know that Uncle Ben was there, because in this storyline, that was his strength. That really showed his strength, and I want to see more of that in the films.
Absolutely. I think we will see that in the films. But you're right. It was just, we saw it too many times, and I'm really glad the way they introduced Spider-Man into the MCU. But speaking of Spider-Man, it's now time for Chris and myself to share with you guys our favorite stories. So Chris, here we go.
Well, I know you're probably going to bring up some images, but I'll just bring up the books themselves. How about that? Does that work?
Of course you are.
All
Let's go
right.
full screen on this.
Okay, we got. It's kind of a glare. It's in the baggie. My Amazing Spider-Man 121 CGC. It's a 5.0, but I love this book. And then we got Amazing Spider-Man 122, and this is the infamous Death of Gwen Stacy storyline. Jerry Conway, one of my favorite writers of all time. John Romita Sr., my favorite artist of all time. And just these two books, guys, probably two of my top 5 books in my collection. That storyline to me, talk about people staying dead. And I know that we've had an influx of clones and multiverse world Gwens, but it never compares to the fact that Gwen Stacy died and she stayed dead. This storyline, in the way Jerry Conway wrote Spider-Man back in those days, it had the banter and the fun 1960s, 1970s style. We get that, but he added such depth and layer to the character that was Peter Parker. And the way that this storyline transpired and panned out, it's epic. And we were just talking about storylines like Kraven's Last Hunt or Frank Miller's Year One in the 80s. But really, this storyline was, to me, ahead of its time. And it really sticks with me. Like I said, the one thing that I've always related to with Spider-Man is that even in those days, way back then, and I know Jerry Conway was writing it, but it was heavily influenced by Stan Lee himself. He wanted to make these characters human beings. Okay, we saw that. We were just talking about that with Uncle Ben and how that affected him. And here's the next thing that truly affected this character for years and decades to come, and that's the death of somebody that he loved, Gwen Stacy. It's like iconic, and it will always be probably my favorite storyline of all time.
Yeah, I saw actually. There's on YouTube. We should probably put in the link below, but a kind of short documentary on this story and how it went down, and it's just kind of fascinating what led up to this. And kudos. That's a huge risk for them to do back then. Like out of nowhere too, and they say it in the issue. Somebody dies in this issue, and they have all those people on there. But for it to be Gwen Stacy, I can't imagine. Because I grew up already knowing this through maybe a flashback or something like that, and the issues that I grew up with. You and I didn't read this as holy shit. So I would love to talk to somebody who actually read this and actually got kicked in the groin. Oh my God, because I'm sure it kicked a ton of people in the groin. It's
Absolutely.
a great story. It's a great storyline that you picked there. All right. But now I'm going to move to mine, Chris. Mine's a little bit out of left field. Not many people mention this book, but this is an early 90s book written by Peter David, Dale Keown doing the art. It's Incredible Hulk 388. The reason I bring this book up is because this one actually hit me. And, I was a suburban kid. I didn't really, I didn't know much about the AIDS epidemic or HIV. Growing up, all that stuff. But this issue right here was a standalone issue. The story was Rick Jones flew out to meet his buddy Jim Wilson in Miami to play a gig. Rick Jones is kind of the sidekick of the Hulk. As they're driving to the gig, Jim Wilson tells Rick Jones he's HIV positive, and basically Rick Jones is like, "You have AIDS?" He's like, "Yeah." So Rick Jones is just blown away by this news. They They continue on. They talk about it. Rick Jones is mad he didn't tell him before, et cetera, et cetera. They're at the benefit playing the show, and this villain on the cover you see here, Speed Freak, breaks it up. He's trying to murder somebody. Jim Wilson, or Rick Jones kind of tries to stop him. He gets his hand slashed, starts bleeding. Rick Jones. He gets all of his palms are just bleeding. Jim Wilson gets stabbed in the chest. At that moment, Rick Jones feels helpless because he cannot help his friend who's laying on the floor, knowing that it's possible that he could get AIDS. The Hulk steps in to take Jim Wilson to the hospital, but Rick Jones just feels terrible that he had to hesitate and did not know what to do in that moment. That just hit me. This storyline just kind of blew me away because this has never been done in comics before. Nobody ever talked about AIDS or anything like that, and this is the first issue I remember dealing with something like that in such an impactful way, and it really it left an impression. It's one of my favorite all-time issues. Again, Marvel Unlimited, Hulk issue 388. If you haven't already checked it out, give that a read because, again, it left an impression on me.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, addressing society and how these artists and writers dealt with this through comic books. And how about this one, too, 420? With the
that's right. It's the death of Jim Wilson. I forgot to mention that he dies 40 issues later, 32 issues later. So yeah, and that's written by Peter David too, who really again took risks. A lot of these people we're mentioning, a lot of these issues we're mentioning, people are taking risks. Like Kraven the Hunter. I mean that you're dealing with there were some mental issues he was dealing with, Kraven, that they didn't address right off the bat, but I mean, he's manic in there. He's showing, he's crying, and then all of a sudden he's super happy. So, the death of Gwen Stacy, again, taking a risk. This AIDS issue in the Hulk, taking a risk. So those are social issues are really the ones that I feel like make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always question, it's like, I wonder what it would be like if there was social media during all those times. And just, I think I really wish sometimes we as collectors, as a community, can turn off social media and take this art form for what it is, like we did in the olden days. And I think a lot of people would find themselves more grounded in just at the basic level connecting with what's going on in these books. I don't think a lot has changed. I still think that overall the industry, is trying to do the same thing. We're trying to tell stories relevant to the world that we live in and the world that exists outside our door. And if not our door, then somebody else's doors that maybe we have never, put ourselves in the shoes of. And, I think social media heightens up, kind of extreme opinions on both sides of how to look at these things. But I think at the end of the day, you're right. When people take risks to say, look, these are that we're going to talk about it, take it or leave it, but we feel this needs to be addressed. And I feel the day that comic books stop doing that is the day that comic books aren't comic books anymore. Agreed.
100%. And right there, I think we'll end our favorite comic story, CBC. This is great. You guys, maybe we'll probably run this again in the next few coming weeks because you guys did not disappoint. Again, hashtag favorite story CBC. If you want to continue to share, we'll continue to share on the show as well. Now, we're going to move on to our Q&A section right here. Isaac Maynard has a very good question about Tron. Is the Tron Legacy film going to pick off from the last film? It's been so long, fans are probably going to have trouble remembering the last film. So Tron Legacy was the last film. And yes, I'm sure if they're going to do a sequel, it will pick up from the previous one. I mentioned I definitely want to watch this again. I don't know about you, Chris.
I don't know, Isaac. I'm going to assume maybe you're probably a little younger than us here, but 10 years or maybe a few more until the next one. Well, we waited, almost 30 years to get a sequel to the original Tron. So think about that. Imagine being like, a teenager and when did it come out? 1982, 83?
Yeah.
when the original one came out. Imagine being like a teenager, and by the time the next one comes out, you're like 50-something years old. And you're like, oh man, what happened in the first? So yeah, I hear you, but yeah, no, I mean they made it work with Tron Legacy. That's why I said I think it's really interesting because this is a franchise that I think works with having these wide separations between what's going on. I think it actually works. So I'm not concerned. And hey, look, if the next movie's coming out, go rent or on demand Tron and Tron Legacy or something. And just make sure you watch them before the next one comes out.
It's on Disney Plus. Both of them.
Yep.
So you got Disney Plus. You got Tron. All right, Johnny Zuko. I don't want to see Aliens or Predator crossover with the MCU. You're going to totally ruin those horror creatures, and by introducing them in the MCU, they're not going to be scary, they're not going to be powerful, but more importantly, they're not going to be intimidating. I don't know about that. Aliens, man, Jesus, those guys are creepy as hell. Predator's pretty formidable, too.
Okay, so to Johnny Zuko's defense, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the Disney realm of franchises, especially with the MCU being that PG-13. How do you take a franchise like Aliens or Predator and put that PG-13? But I'm going to challenge Zuko because I am extremely confident that Disney is opening the door for the R-rated films. We know that Deadpool's coming over. We know that it's going to be R-rated. We know that Blade's coming out. It's got to be R-rated. If this happens, it's going to be under that umbrella of R-rated films. Absolutely. Disney's not stupid. I think they're going to know how to do this if they take this under their belt. And look, you have a character Blade or even Deadpool where you could team Deadpool up with Tom Holland Spider-Man and make it a campy, fun PG-13 movie, right? It would work as long as Deadpool is still Deadpool in his own films and own realm. Even a character like Blade can have his own films. You got to make it rated R. Blade can come over and team up, with the Avengers or something and make it work. These are characters where that it might be a little tougher. Like I don't know if we'll ever see the Aliens or Predators like be a part of, say, an Avengers film, but to see a Aliens film or Predator film where it's like they're going one-on-one with a character like Hulk, or you bring one like Iron Man against Predator or something like that, and you bring them over into an Alien or Predator film, but it still exists in the same the same universe. You could still keep it rated R and make it work. That's what I agree.
100%. And let's be honest. Kevin Feige is smart. And it's not just Kevin Feige. They got a lot of smart people there. And they have given us little reason not to trust them. So let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and see what happens here. Okay. One last comment. So when you said who is it? Isaac may be a little bit younger. At least Bishner5929, dude, you keep mentioning movie dates and it's making me feel old. So he's with us. He's with us, man. So anyways, it's all mindset being old. I still feel young. I still feel like a kid. And I think this hobby helps with that. So the show helps with that. I enjoy talking with you, Chris, about all this geeky goodness. I enjoy sharing it with our audience. Thank you guys so much for watching. That is our show for this week. We will be back next week, the 17th, Friday the 17th. Until then, please give us a follow on the socials, Comic Book Canon on Instagram and Twitter. And also, like and subscribe. We need to get to 100 subscriptions so we can get that Comic Book Canon name. Would really appreciate that. This has been a fun show, Chris.
Yeah, I want to say one thing to keep our viewers interested, because I think next week is going to be a super fun show. We should be doing a CGC unboxing, guess the grade, next week. So yeah, look forward to that. Tell your friends. And yeah, guys, I mean, support. You're here watching now. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Share it. The more support that we get, the better that we can make the show for you guys moving forward. So it works out both ways. Symbiotic, right?
Well said. I could not have said it any better. Chris, again, great show. I had so much fun with you. I can't wait to do it again next week.
Right on. You too, Jeb.
Uh,
Thank you, guys.
All right. Until next week, y'all be good. Have a happy and safe week ahead.